Angels. They're everywhere. Most of what we see around us most of them are all cute and hallmarkish. Putty everywhere you look. I have an angel around my neck right now because my niece bought me one when we both lost people we loved. I would never wear this, but she bought it for me. She loves me. I just went to see her. And I haven't taken it off because I thought I could at least say, see you. Angels, that's why we're talking about them. But angels, are not simply mawkishly sweet these days. Yesterday I was looking for something, and I'd been on a site reading something, and all of a sudden there's this big music, and I'm thinking, what the heck is this? And I'm clicking at all of the things that I have open, because of course I always have a bunch of things open, and I can't find it. I finally had to shut down, and I realized there was a video game being advertised called Realm of Angels. And they were, and then I went online and I checked and I saw not less than 5. And where the angels are dangerous and pretty frightening and wildly ripped. I mean, really, angels. Yesterday, driving to the board meeting, the gulls were lined up on the river in the same formation the angels had. Well, actually, I'm sure it was the angels had the same formation that the gulls have on the sand. Was it in City of Angels where you saw the angels sitting facing the sun? I saw a movie. I saw two movies. And the day before, at the drive-in in Danville, announced on its sign, "We believe in angels. Do you?" Facebook, card shop, bookstore, fabric store, they're everywhere. So what do we care? I'm talking about angels because Sarah told me the kidlets were talking about angels, presence, and prayer this week. They're doing yoga now, and that was changed, but by the time I realized what they'd be talking about it next week, I'd already sent the bulletin in. Carl said yesterday he was looking for answers and wanted to know how many angels could dance on the head of a pin. I thought it was Paul who brought that up, and it was not. It was medieval authorities. I had to be very circumspect, or I would still be reading under titles such as Actual Facts About Angels, most of which are fairly far from factual. And someone at some point apparently needed to clarify that while an infinity of angels could stand on the head of a pin, or indeed the point of a needle, only a few could dance. Carl, I would say that I believe how many angels dance always has to do with the quality of the band. So more cowbell, as long as Mr. Mitchell's there, we're on the dance floor. Okay. But this is the kind of theology that makes me crazy. It's the theology designed to pull the divine from the hands of the people. People sat in ivory towers eating rich food taxed out of feudal serfs and pondered angels and pins. John Q. and Mary W. Cerf didn't have time to think such lofty thoughts while toiling at subsistence level farming. It was reassuring to be reminded last week that this was the kind of theology that made Joseph Priestley crazy. And even though my assignment today was angels, I confess I've been thinking a lot about heretics, why I like them, and why identifying myself, and perhaps all of us identifying ourselves as one, might have merit. I suspect the focus for the little kids will be presence. What is presence? Where do we feel it? Why do we name it? Phrases such as guardian angel are a reflection of our noticing, feeling that we're not alone, that something might save us from bad situations, that random luck is not enough. And if someone notices that angels saved Henry but couldn't be bothered to save Matilda, people rush in to say, oh, God has a plan. My sister and I, when pondering her bad luck in life, always used to joke in that Evans style of something must be too painful, would generally say, well, Deb, he just doesn't like you. But who am I to whine about angels? I've written at least 2 short stories about them. I think they're a great metaphor. And who doesn't want to know what the aurora borealis sounds like? Would the aurora australis sound differently? Sometimes on a winter night, I can imagine the sky filled with light and sound. I have to believe it would sound like hope, like peace. In much of the Hebrew, Christian, and Islamic scriptures, angels indicate intimate presence. They wrestle with Jacob and cause Mary to conceive. But they also symbolize military might. As nonsensical as I find the medieval arguments about pin dancing, the absolute assurance about the rank and file of our angels is equally preposterous. Here you go. And these angels don't dance. Don't ask them. There are the seraphim. They have 6 wings, 2 to cover their face, 2 to cover their feet. What is it about their feet? Although, actually, I do know, because feet was a euphemism for genitals. But they didn't have them, so I don't know what the problem was. But they guard and keep the throne and shout, "Holy, holy, holy." Then they're the cherubim. And they have 4 faces. And if you've been in a lot of Christian churches, you will see these on, but it's man, ox, lion, and eagle. And they guard the way to the tree of life in Eden. There's the Ophanim, who are the symbols of God's justice. The dominions, who rule over countries and other lower angels. The virtues or strongholds, I like these guys. They hold the heavenly bodies in place. So it's important to know that when that meteor is coming at us, that we're going like, okay, strongholds in place, right? The powers or authorities, and they are the bearers of conscience and the keepers of history, and they are the warriors of God, completely loyal. And I'll bet that if you do too much looking, that you'll find that the Swiss Guard is based entirely on the myth about them. And then there are the principalities or rulers who bequeath powers to the material world. Then there are the archangels, of which there are 6. Gabriel, messenger. Michael, protector and healer, leader of armies. Raphael, healer. Uriel, who is the flame of God, the light. Raguel, friend, justice, fairness, harmony. Remiel, hopes, visions, and guiding souls into heaven. And Saraquel, who has protective powers. There are Grigori, who are the famous angels, or the fallen angels, and there's all sorts of conversation about where Lucifer was and any of that. And the angels, who are the heralds, and they do all the harking, and they're the ones we hear about. So, but, you know, it's like they write about this as if it were like those, you know, graham crackers in the bag. This is who they are. We've seen them. We know them. And this is the way we're setting up the world. Many someones spent a lot of time trying to work this all out. There's a Gnostic phrase, as above, so below. And this really seems to be more a notion of as below, so above. Or as we would like it to be below, so we're going to create it above. People in power envisioned a heaven that worked the same way that they wanted their world to work. Certainly a great way to justify a feudal society. Angels were fairly genderless, as long as you understand maleness to be the norm. So perhaps asexual rather than genderless. I may have told you this before, but this just knocks me out. When I was in seminary, a minister informed me that there were no genitals in heaven. I was dumbfounded. Who thinks about this? But he's on firm ground with a large group of angel scholars. Angel scholars may make as much sense as sexless angels or any angels at all, depending how your world is. But the big argument about Jesus was that he was begotten, not made, which separated him from the angels who were made, not begotten. I didn't venture into the ground of that great getting up morning because I knew this guy was going to go places that I really didn't want to have to talk to him about in the what happens to bodily resurrection. But arguments such as this are all part of the getting it wrong that separated people like Priestley from the Trinitarians. People died trying to settle the question of whether Jesus, having been begotten, which was the incarnational, necessity, which was settled at the Council of Nicaea, could have existed before incarnation. So, on the one hand, the people who wanted Jesus to be incarnate won in the Council of Nicaea, and so he is begotten, not made. But they also talk about existed always with the Father, and so the notion was that before he was begotten, he was still there, and that's how God gets to be a Trinity. And it's very confusing. But here's the thing. People fought to the death over it. I mean, there are incredible stories of people racing to get to the council and, servants being set back to turn the arrows so that they headed in a different direction from Nicaea, so that people went off on the long way so they wouldn't get there to vote. And people were assassinated over things like this. And it continued to happen. John Calvin had Michael Servetus burned at the stake for questioning these assumptions. That was 13-something, was it? Somewhere in the 1500s, you know me. We don't like to be wrong. And when we realize something isn't flowing smoothly, often we'll double down and insist that this anomaly is true. We've seen too much lately of people's venturing into territory they'd do better to leave untouched. And then once they say something, they aren't really able to say, oops, synapse mishap, please disregard the previous. I mean, if you look at the stuff that has been said in the South about women's bodies or hosts of fetuses, the Ku Klux Klan recently, there was an article recently where they said, I'm not really sure why the coloreds and the mongrels are worried about us. And ministers here who are responsible for what's going on in Uganda with the gay lesbian question, ministers here who are holding the gays responsible. I didn't know how powerful you all were for what's going on in Ukraine. And it's scary. It would be laughable if people weren't talking about it out loud. And I don't think it's helpful, although we often want to just go like, he's an idiot. Okay, he's an idiot. But somehow we have to change the conversation so that some recent stuff that Paul Ryan said about children, the need, that it's fine for children to be hungry. And we live in a world where that concept exists. We have to move that out. And jumping up and down isn't going to help. I'm not sure what does. But when people start to talk about this and you push them on that stupidity, they'll do what the ancient Hebrews called building a fence around a topic. You make it real, you make it three-dimensional. With the angels, the same crowd that loves, not just enjoys, the Da Vinci Code and what's said to be behind it, loves the angel hierarchy and spends time working with it. The notion is one thing. It's amusing. We're so easily taken with anything mysterious, anything to distract us from the real problems, anyone else to get us what we want without our having to do the work. And I guess in the long run, that's my problem with the commercial angels. They're often used as a tool to separate us from our own agency. How are we present to life? Yoga, exercise, reading a book, newspaper. In this crowd, you're going to get a wide number of answers to that question. The other question is, what are we present to? What lens do we look through? What filters do we need to consciously remove? For me, these are the theological questions. I knew a guy that I used to work with when I was in New York who was a painter, and he painted pictures of angels. And at one point, I sort of said to him, so I noticed that all your angels are white. And he said, well, they are. And I said, well, why? Well, because I've done astral traveling and I know. And I said, so do you think there could be any social conditioning to your astral traveling? this is right. I was like, okay. But who are our angels? They're the people who see us for that one moment in time and answer our needs. To see them and recognize them as creatures of the divine is important. To surround ourselves with those willing to respond to need is a good idea. But it is not necessarily a good thing to wrap them in otherness, because that relieves us of the need to become that loving, seeing, giving other. Are you groaning? Did you suspect somehow it wasn't going to come to this? I am still a Kennedy kid, so ask not, as you know. But I believe the practice of faith is putting what we believe to work. Yesterday, the board talked about many things. As we talked about budget, we discussed what we needed to do to ensure our health as a congregation. We're in a quandary. There are things we need to do to be successful. We still have a lot of outstanding pledges, so please get going. Pledge generously. We need to use the gift card more determinedly. This is such a stupid, easy way for us to raise money, yet less than half of us use it. And if it doesn't work for you this way, let's talk about what would make it work. But let's start using it. Because most of us eat. And it requires a bit of forethought. But if doing nothing other than buying groceries and drugs can get you a better church, shouldn't you be participating? Those would be drugs that are legal. I just want to clarify. Yeah, too late, really, sorry. But no matter how many grocery cards we buy, we are going to need to do some substantial fundraising aside from the yard sale. We count a lot on that. We're grateful for the people who do the work, and there are other things that need to be done. So the question I think I'd like you all to think about is, could you work at one event? Could you help to plan and work at one event? In the past, a service auction has raised close to $10,000. A lot of planning and one night of fun, and then a year of getting to know each other in each other's homes as we indulge what we got at the social auction. Yeah, we're all busy. We all are. This place matters. And if you look at what has been in the paper in the last couple days, in the Daily Item at least, yesterday was conversation was about Line Mountain, that's Midwest, that's going online. Line Mountain's talking about it. Warrior Run is talking about it. You know, so we have work to do. And if you read Lois' small list of small but earth-shaking miracles at the Jungle Center, it's heartwarming. It's a labor of love for Lois, yes, but we helped. Knowing that life changes for the better, why would we miss the opportunity to be part of that? We're going to have a chance to work next with Girls in the Run. We can make things happen there too. And as for being an angel or a heretic, if you prefer, let's look to Love Flows. Do heretics have those great wings? Because the wings, we like the style thing, right? In the midst of a very busy week, Lenore, Kathy Hummel, and I sat down with Pam and Jolene from Caring for Kids. At some point in that conversation, each and every one of us was in tears. Pam and Jolene were in tears because they're astonished that at this point in the career, they're both about my age, maybe a little younger, they are doing the best work of their lives. They are making such a difference. I have stories which I will eventually sort of get together and get out, but you can't believe what a difference this is making in people's lives. Kathy, Lenore, and I, because the system is so frustrating and the need is so overwhelming. Children feel empowered because they have food. One little boy came racing into Jolene, who was the school nurse, her office, shouting, "I have to get new pants. Look how much weight I've lost." And Jolene said, losing weight isn't the point. The point is to make sure you're fed. And he said, no, before all I ever got to eat was chips on the weekend. And now I'm eating food. Here's the heartbreaker. This was why the Love Flows matters. A young girl had been getting weekend food. her mother called and said, "My husband got a job. We don't need that anymore. Thank you." Very shortly after that, the mother died. Distraught, the father came back to see if his daughter could get reinstated in the program. In addition to not having any money for weekend food, the dad had to take a second job on the weekends, which left the little girl alone. When she came to school one Monday, she told Pam, "I was so frightened to be alone." Pam said, "What did you do to help with the fear?" She said, "I went to my bag and I took out my can of ravioli and I held on to it and I wasn't afraid anymore." There are a lot of things that are wrong with that story that we can't fix. But by damn, we can make sure that child has a can of ravioli every week. And we can get others to help. Forget the cute angels. Most of the time, angels look just like the people we see in the mirrors. Let us make that true. It is my prayer that we will do so. It is also my intention. So come on, let's play angels and heretics, and let's all win. We have this.